What if we say that the world is nothing without Africa? Well, it might seem an exaggeration. However, after you know what Africa really means for the world, you will be shocked. There are secret reasons why Western countries, especially Europe, talk so much about Africa and portray themselves as helping African countries. Africa has things that the world cannot live without. However, these facts have stayed hidden. The fact that you don't think Africa is the center of the world proves that the Western media has successfully brainwashed everyone to think that the West is powering the world. However, the whole of the West got disturbed when a single African country, Niger, declined to offer uranium. But what would happen if all African countries stopped offering what they have been for centuries? Will the world reach a standstill? Let's find out. French President Jacques Chirac once said France would be a third world country without Africa. Because he was president of France only, he could only say that for France. However, what he actually meant was that without Africa, the West and the world would be nothing, often referred to as the mother continent, because it's the oldest inhabited landmass on Earth. Africa has been home to humans and their ancestors for over 5 million years. The name Africa has sparked debates among scholars, with many linking it to terms used by the Phoenicians, Greeks, and Romans. Some notable references include the Egyptian term Afru, which means motherland. As the second largest landmass globally, Africa is surrounded by the Mediterranean Sea, the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean, with the equator dividing it almost evenly. Known for its abundant natural resources, Africa boasts plenty of arable land, water bodies, oil and gas reserves, minerals, forests, and wildlife. With a significant share of the world's natural resources, Africa holds 30% of global mineral reserves, 8% of natural gas, and 12% of oil reserves. It also possesses substantial amounts of gold, chromium, platinum, cobalt, diamonds, and germanium. Additionally, Africa claims 65% of the world's arable land and 10% of its renewable freshwater sources. You can guess that with such a land, Africa provides food for the world. So is Africa the continent that feeds the world? Well, the answer is yes. Over 70% of people in sub-Saharan Africa depend on forests and woodlands for sustenance. However, unsustainable resource exploitation and illegal activities like financial fraud, illegal mining, deforestation, wildlife trafficking, unregulated fishing, and environmental degradation result in an annual depletion of around $195 billion of Africa's natural wealth. Recognizing the critical role of its vast natural resources, Africa has the potential to finance its development goals and achieve greater prosperity. The continent must prioritize sustainable, outcome-driven, and climate-resilient strategies to harness its natural wealth. Africa's climatic diversity further adds to its importance. Tropical wet conditions prevail along the equator, the Gulf of Guinea, and the East Madagascar coast, maintaining temperatures around 27 degrees Celsius year-round. Savanna conditions in eastern and southern Africa feature cooler and variable temperatures, influencing the cultivation of essential crops like pineapple, coffee, cocoa, and oil palms. Palm oil, a staple cooking ingredient in Africa, is as popular as olive oil or corn oil in North America. In Africa, annual rainfall ranges from 50 to 152 centimeters. The savanna region experiences a dry season lasting up to 6 months, during which crucial crops like cassava, peanuts, peppers, okra, eggplant, cucumber, and watermelon are cultivated. Millet and sorghum, vital grain crops for the continent, are also grown in this area. Northern Africa, particularly the Sahara and the Sahel, faces desert conditions, with temperatures ranging from scorching highs of 54 degrees Celsius to freezing lows on the coldest nights. Rainfall typically doesn't exceed 25 centimeters annually, and some areas may endure extended periods without rain. Date palms and cotton are significant crops in these desert regions. The reason why we are telling you about these details is the crops that Africa offers to the entire world. These crops and products run factories not only in the West, but in every part of the world, fulfilling the demands of billions of people. On Africa's extreme northern and southern coasts, a Mediterranean climate prevails, characterized by mild temperatures, dry summers, and moderately rainy winters. Notable crops grown in these regions include figs, olives, oranges, tomatoes, onions, cabbage, and cauliflower. In the Ethiopian highlands, where highland conditions prevail, temperatures are considerably colder, and rainfall patterns depend on the mountain's orientation to moisture-bearing winds. Agriculture, considered Africa's most crucial economic activity, is heavily influenced by these climatic factors. It employs 2/3 of Africa's workforce and contributes between 20 to 60% of each country's gross domestic product. Key crops in this sector include alfalfa, potatoes, wheat, cocoa, and coffee. But what about other forestry products? Well, Africa provides products that help house the world. Forestry, involving the management of trees and vegetation in forests, is also a significant economic pursuit in Africa. Forest products contribute an average of 6% to Africa's GDP, the highest among continents. In Central and Western Africa, where forest cover is dense, the forestry sector accounts for over 60% of GDP. The export of high-quality woods like mahogany and okume generates substantial revenue, primarily to Japan, Israel, and the European Union. For instance, okume represents 90% of the trees logged in Gabon and is used in various products ranging from residential structures to musical instruments to lightweight aircraft. However, Africa grapples with the challenge of striking a balance between exploiting its forests for economic growth and safeguarding these natural landscapes from excessive exploitation. For example, the Central African Forest Commission oversees forestry activities across Africa, advocating for sustainable practices in the Congo Basin rainforests. This commission established the Sangha Tri-National Landscape, a reserve spanning more than 1 million hectares, or 2.4 million acres, of rainforest across Cameroon, the Central African Republic, and the Republic of the Congo. But does Africa dominate in the fishing sector as well? Well, as expected, Africa provides seafood to the entire world. Africa's fishing industry sustains the livelihoods of over 10 million people and boasts an annual export worth $24 billion. Fisheries are prevalent along Africa's coastlines and inland in the Great Lakes and the Nile River. In 2000, West Africa was a significant global fishing hub, yielding 4.5 million tons of fish. Namibia and South Africa are key players in the marine fish market, exporting between 80 and 90% of their annual catch. In Eastern Africa, nations like Eritrea, Somalia, and Kenya have established fisheries in the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. While smaller fish like herring and sardines are common catches along Africa's coastline, larger species such as tuna, cod, hake, and haddock are more economically valuable. You should know that Africa's vast inland fisheries boast over 3,000 fish species and contribute 2/3 of the global inland fish production. Unlike marine fisheries, the catch from Africa's inland fisheries is primarily consumed domestically, serving as a crucial protein source for the continent's population. The Great Lakes of Africa, particularly Lake Victoria, hosts the largest inland fisheries on the continent. Lake Victoria is the most productive freshwater fishery worldwide, yielding over 500,000 tons of fish, valued at $600 million annually. Nile perch and Nile tilapia are the primary commercial fish species in Lake Victoria. But how does Africa offer metals and minerals without which the world cannot survive? Well, Africa is a significant producer of essential resources like uranium for nuclear energy, platinum for jewelry and industrial applications, nickel for stainless steel, magnets, coins, and batteries, bauxite for aluminum production, and cobalt for pigments. The reason why most European countries and the United States are so focused on Niger after its coup is uranium, which Niger made expensive. What's more, in 2008, Africa produced approximately 483 tons of gold, accounting for 22% of the world's total production. South Africa leads the way in gold production across Africa, contributing nearly half of the continent's total output. Other notable gold-producing nations include Ghana, Guinea, Mali, and Tanzania. Even Africa holds a dominant position in the global diamond market, producing 55% of the world's diamonds in 2008. Botswana, Angola, South Africa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Namibia stand out as the primary diamond producers on the continent. But is Africa also rich in oil and natural gas? The answer is yes. Africa has substantial oil and natural gas reserves, primarily utilized for energy and fuel. In 2007, the continent contributed 12.5% to the world's oil production and 6.45% to the world's natural gas production. In 2022, African countries collectively produced 7.1 million barrels of oil per day. Nigeria, Libya, Algeria, Egypt, and Angola dominate Africa's oil sector, with many countries ramping up oil exploration activities to become first-time producers. Therefore, the natural resource economy significantly shapes Africa's built environment, influencing the development of human-made structures and buildings. Major engineering ventures and urban areas are closely intertwined with resource extraction and trade. South Africa is home to one of the largest gold mines globally, featuring 8 shafts plunging to depths of up to 3,352 meters below ground. One of these shafts is currently undergoing expansion to reach approximately 4,015 meters, making it the deepest mine worldwide. But how is Africa monetizing its resources for growth? Well, 2 urban areas that illustrate the growth across Africa are Lagos, Nigeria, and Johannesburg, South Africa. These cities, both significant economic hubs, are witnessing rapid expansion alongside shared challenges resulting from their growth. Lagos is Africa's second most populous city, with a population of around 16 million. Its growth surpasses major cities like New York City or Los Angeles, with the United Nations projecting it among the world's largest cities. Lagos serves as Nigeria's commercial and industrial nucleus, capitalizing on its strategic location near the oil-rich Gulf of Guinea and the Niger Delta. However, the city's swift and unregulated expansion has resulted in sprawling and disorderly urban development, marked by overcrowded residential areas, burgeoning slum communities encroaching on unsuitable land, water scarcity, inadequate sanitation, and heavy congestion. In contrast, Johannesburg, South Africa's largest city, boasts a metropolitan population exceeding 7 million. Notably, it is the world's largest city, not situated on a river, lake, or coastline. Historically centered around the gold and diamond industries, Johannesburg remains a pivotal financial center, hosting Africa's largest stock exchange, the JSE or Johannesburg Stock Exchange. While mining activities are diminishing in significance, numerous mining companies retain their headquarters in the city. Johannesburg's economic prosperity is rooted in its abundant mineral resources, which support not only mining, but also various manufacturing sectors. These minerals play a vital role in the production of modern electronics, contributing to the remarkable growth observed in the global smartphone market in recent years. As of 2020, nearly 4 out of 5 people, representing 78% of the population, own a smartphone. More than half of a mobile phone's components, including its electronics, display, battery, and speakers, are made from materials mined and partially processed. Essential metals like lithium and cobalt play critical roles in battery manufacturing. In 2019, approximately 63% of the world's cobalt production came from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Tantalum, another metal used in electronic devices, particularly in tantalum capacitors found in mobile phones, laptops, and various automotive electronics, is primarily sourced from the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda, accounting for half of the global production. Among Africa's 54 nations, petroleum and coal are significant minerals in 22 of them. In 2019, Manchuria accounted for the majority of the continent's petroleum production at 25%, followed by Angola at 17% and Algeria at 16%. Metals such as gold, iron, titanium, zinc, and copper are the primary minerals produced across 11 countries. Ghana leads as the largest gold producer on the continent, followed by South Africa and Mali. Industrial minerals like diamonds, gypsum, salt, sulfur, and phosphates are the primary commodities for 13 African countries. The Democratic Republic of the Congo ranks as Africa's leading industrial diamond producer, followed by Botswana and South Africa. Botswana leads in the production of high-quality gem diamonds for jewelry. In terms of mineral revenue, South Africa generates the highest annual income at $125 billion.
It is crystal clear that Africa powers the world. The world is nothing without Africa. Listen to the argument of Shahid King Bolzan.
There was a book George Friedman, the geopolitical analyst, he wrote a book in the early 2000s called The Next 100 Years, where he tried to sort of forecast what the world might look like in the year 2100. He began by talking about what the world looked like in the year 1900, and then he goes sort of decade by decade, how radically everything changed between, say, 1900 and 1930, or 1930 to 1950, and so on. And it's truly astonishing how many drastic paradigm shifts took place. Empires fell, empires rose, world wars, on and on. Really breathtaking global shifts. When you look at history that way, it's hard to wrap your head around how many changes can actually take place in a relatively short amount of time. Basically, within one person's lifetime, everything can change. You know, in 1900, like he says in his book, London was the center of the world. There was no communism, no Soviet Union. There was the Ottoman Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and so on. The Americans mostly stayed on their side of the Atlantic. And it seemed like this is how things would just be, you know, indefinitely. But just a short 40 years or so later, everything changed. England was demolished in the World War. The Ottomans were gone. The Soviets emerged. Germany took over France, on and on. Really radical, unthinkable changes. Then if you go ahead a few more decades to the 1980s, again, it seems like a completely different world. And then on forward to the 2000s, it's remarkable. Everything changed. And when you think about that, when you think about how many huge paradigmatic pendulum swings there have been that have taken place and that do take place in just a matter of decades, it makes certain continuities even more astonishing. When you're able to maintain a constant amidst the radical changes that sweep over every other element of international relations, global power relationships, international relations, and so on, when you're able to actually keep something unchanged, it lets you know just how important, how paramount it is that this particular status quo remains intact, how important it is to those who are keeping it intact. And I'm talking now about the West's relationship with Africa, because the West's economic relationship with Africa has not fundamentally changed in over 800 years. This is absolutely stunning. If the drastic and rapid changes that can occur and have occurred within the West over just 1 or 2 decades, if that's breathtaking, well, what about the fact that nothing has changed between the West and Africa in basically a millennium? I mean, the relationship was ruthlessly extractive 800 years ago, and it's ruthlessly extractive now. And you can't help but recognize that keeping things this way simply must not only be important to the West, but literally it must be the most important thing to the West. It's so important to them that they have always maintained this status quo no matter what else changes in the world. Wallahi, they're dedicated to the subjugation and the exploitation of Africa more than they're dedicated to anything else. Everything else is allowed to change except for this. This must never change. And it's not difficult to see why. I mean, it's the subjugation and the exploitation of Africa that has enabled the West to impersonate a superior civilization. It's like a con man, you know, a drifter who tries to convince people that he's some sort of an aristocrat or a monarch or something. Well, he needs to have some kind of a display of a monarch's wealth in order to be convincing. And that's been the whole basis for what the West claims about itself being superior. The whole basis has always been that they're materially successful. So, okay, today you have iPhones and technology, you have a high standard of living and so forth. So that means that you must be better. You must be more intelligent. You must be more evolved. You must be more civilized, more advanced than the rest of us. I mean, look how nice their places are. See how much better their stuff is. Well, this is all reliant upon the vicious pillage and plunder of Africa. Without this subjugation, without this exploitation of Africa, Europe and the West would be nothing but crude, emaciated serfs, barely producing enough to survive. Their wealth was primarily derived from theft and plunder, from piracy and slavery, from mass murder and crime. This is just a historical reality. Because of the subjugation of Africa, first through chattel slavery, the extraction of Africa's human resources, and now through the extraction of natural resources, the West has been able to maintain this artificial, unearned status as a so-called civilization, keeping Africa subject, subordinate, suppressed, and impoverished is an existential need for the West. It's the only way that they can keep up the pretense of their supremacy. Because again, the pretense of their supremacy has never been based upon any actual advancement, any actual sophistication, any actual moral or intellectual development. It has always been based on the violent accumulation of wealth and resources, upon brute power, deceit, and conniving. And Africa, the subjugation of Africa, is the most vital necessity for keeping this con going. I mean, right now, the trade relationship between the West and Africa is that something like 70% of exports to Africa from the West are manufactured goods, and imports from Africa are just the raw materials used to make those The most dangerous situation is in Africa, because of course Africa is absolutely the most important continent on the planet. The most important continent to the planet. And the next most important, and therefore the next most at-risk region, is the Middle East. The Middle East and Africa power the whole global economy. They power everything that makes so-called modern life possible. It's all made possible by the Middle East and Africa. And if the West was an actually civilized civilization, that would mean that peace and stability in the Middle East and in Africa should be of paramount importance. Good relations and harmonious dealings and so on, that would be the priority if they were civilized people. But of course the West is not civilized. And if you have something that they need, if you have something that they want, then they do not see you as a friend. They don't see you as a friend that they want to be close to and have good relations with. They see you as an enemy that they want to subjugate. They see the world in a predator-prey paradigm.